Okay, well, welcome everybody. Apologies for not being able to be there in person, but thank you all for attending. However, you are here with us, whether it's in person or virtual. Right now, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is public comment on agenda items. So is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on any of the items that are on today's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the 2021 Transportation Improvement Program. First up are 2021 TIP financial modifications, and I'll turn it over to Brandon Leach.
Thank you, Matt. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. I got a head nod there. So since the June 22nd coordinating committee meeting, there have been 8 administrative modifications to the 2021 Erie Highway Bridge TIP and 1 informational item to share with the TAC today. I will be discussing 3 administrative modifications, which are numbers 3, 4, and 5 on your charts, as well as the informational item that will be following soon. These administrative modifications, as well as the informational item, were used to basically fund the necessary $3.2 to $3.22 million construction cost increase for latest cost estimates on the Zook Road Zimmerly to 26th Street project. This item also required approval from PennDOT's Program Management Committee and received that on July 14th. So just to review the administrative modifications, 2, 3, and 4. These are changes to the TIP to add funds to the Zook Road Zimmerly to 26th Street project. These resulted in, these were to account for cash flow funds from the Bayfront Parkway at 6th Street intersection improvements project, which had a delayed letting for January 2023. As well as funds available from the Erie Highway Bridge line and the PA 531 Depot Road Section 2 project. So a total of $174,942 in federal HSIP funds, $37,778 in STP funds, and $962,222 in 581 funds were added in those actions to Zook Road in federal fiscal year 2022. If Emily would like to flip forward to the informational item, this involved, there we go. This involved an increase using spike HSIP funds from the HSIP set aside line item, which is a statewide line item, to the amount of $2,045,058. This completed the full cost increase for the project. And this was allowed mainly because the high benefit cost ratio for BCR of the project, which is 30 to 1. And because this was coming from the statewide line item, it did not require an amendment to the TIP because it wasn't using regional. So other than that, I'm willing to field any questions about those, or if there are any modifications that we're not covered. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Does anybody have any questions for Brandon? Okay, not hearing any. I think we'll move on. Next is the Bayfront Central Corridor funding. Courtney Lyle, if you'd like to speak about that, please.
Most definitely. So as a part of the packet today, there is a document that lists a request for an increase to the Bayfront project to cover a $2 million increase to right-of-way costs based on the estimates after the appraisals have been completed for all of the properties along the project. as well as an almost $8.2 million construction increase. In July, we received an updated construction estimate from the consultant that included more of the details of what would need to be included for the Holland pedestrian bridge, as well as increases to costs in regards to landscaping that have been determined, the retaining walls and bridge increases that we would have, and an increase based on what we are seeing come in from bids that we have been receiving for projects. So right now we are requesting an increase using bridge funding, federal STP funding, and state 581 funding. I guess I should also say NHPP. Right now, this request is just on the 21 tip. We have not done anything, nor is this request for anything on the 23 tip. The request in itself would be for, we would have to have another vote for the 23 tip whenever it would come live, so that we could carry forward the funding that is not in 2022 in regards to the tip. Sometimes you can do it as one, vote. We're voting for the 21 and the 23 tip at the same time. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I've lost track of time lately, with the federal funds unit in central office. They are anticipating when this project is advertised and we submit for the funds, they are anticipating being able to fund 100% of the federal funds on the 21 tip. It is not a guarantee. It's just what they're anticipating. But if that was the case, it would mean that any of the federal funds that we have in 23, 24, 25 would become available on the 23 tip. If that were to happen right now, we would be looking at $11.7 million being freed up on the 23 tip when we let this project, if they were able to do that. We are not able to make that an absolute guarantee until the project were to actually be obligated, which means that we would have to vote with the understanding that we may have to cover it on the 23 tip, with the hope that we would not have to cover it on the 23 tip. So I understand we don't want to do this as an e-ballot. That is, completely understandable. So wanted to bring it up, answer any questions that were brought up today, and then request a in-person and hybrid meeting next Tuesday at 2 o'clock so that we could officially vote on it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Bids.
Just a question.
Yes.
Do you have, or could you speak a little bit about how it would affect local projects, beyond the Bayfront corridor, if we do have to transfer that money out of the tip?
Yes. So right now, it's not going to be affecting any that are letting between now and the end of this year. It also, so what we're looking at is the ability to fund it on the 23 tip. And worst case scenario is if we were to not receive obligation authority this year that would fully cover the Bayfront federal funds. We are looking at doing everything we possibly can, and I will have this and I can share it before Tuesday's meeting. But we would be looking at letting all 23 projects still in 23. That would be our goal. We just may have to cash flow them out over additional years, which means that projects that we have not scoped as of yet, potentially could be deferred a construction season. But any project that we have currently in design, we are going to do everything we can within our powers to keep them letting in the construction season that they were originally intended on letting. It just may change some in the outer years of the projects. But I will work on that report next. Been trying to clean up everything for the end of this fiscal year, but I can share that before our Tuesday meeting to answer any questions. Best case scenario is the funds are fully obligated on the current TIP, and that means that we actually will be advancing projects on the 23 TIP.
Okay.
We've got both ends of the spectrum here.
Well, I think one other thing it's important to point out, and it's right here on the screen, number one in the discussion, is if these funds are not obligated, then we would lose the 21 million in the build grant. Is that correct?
Yes, we not only would be losing the $21 million in the build grant, but all of the funds that we have tied up right now in 2022, which I don't, let me see if I can find. Right now we have 3, 5.5, 8. We have over almost $11 million in 2022 funds that we would also be losing on the regional TIP. So we're talking the $21 in the build grant, but we're also talking $11 to $12 million in construction funds on the current TIP. So we're looking at $33 to $34 million we could potentially lose if we're not letting this project by September 29th.
Understood. Is there anybody else that has any questions for Courtney or wants to bring anything up for discussion?
I would. Taking this down to drilling it down a little bit to a local level, it'll affect 7 or 8 projects.
It's affecting 7 or 8 projects on the 2021 TIP. So this is where things get very confusing. So ask me as many questions as you guys need to, because it's hard to explain. Basically, when we are talking about the funds that I moved in 23 and 24, those are not what we agreed to for the TIP that is going into effect on October 1st. Okay, what we are doing is we are moving money on the 21 TIP that is fake money. Okay, so what we are doing is we are moving projects that we maybe didn't discuss. I might be taking money off of a project that we tentatively had when we started the 21 TIP in 23 and 24. I have not asked for any funds to be moved on any project on the TIP that will come live on October 1st. So it's not really affecting anything from October 1st on. We are just looking for money to show that we are committed to doing this project. And then if we don't get the full obligation authority, then we would petition to move the money to align it in on the 23 TIP. So no, I have not moved any local projects officially as of yet, nor am I asking to on this particular amendment. We could potentially be asking to, and I am doing, I know, Emily and I were talking last week. I've talked with Ron because this is his first endeavor into the foray of an end of a TIP, start of a new TIP. And Brandon and Kevin, I see you're both on. So if you guys have any way of explaining this that makes it at all easier, please jump in. But when we are working with the TIP, at any time, we are really only looking at the first 2 years. Like we are planning the outer years, but I'm only ever really working on projects in years 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are planned. And then when we go into the next one, we're working on it. So there's a period of time where the projects on the 21 TIP for 23 and 24, they have no bearing on what we're actually doing in 23 and 24. We have already sat and voted when we decided on the 23 TIP. I'm not making any changes to those commitments at this time. From the conversation I had with central office, I may very well not need to ask for any amendments to what we agreed on for 23 and 24. What I am doing right now is showing that we are committed to letting the Bayfront project, and I'm taking money from projects. Some of those projects, I can't remember all of the ones I did, but in other situations, I may be taking money from a project that we actually have no intention of doing in 23 and 24, because we've already agreed we're going to move it out in our negotiations for the 23 tip. But that still sits there on the current one. So it's like I have two checking accounts, and one is only good until September 30th, and the other one starts on October 1st. And I'm working on the one that's going into September 30th, but the October 1st one, I'm not making any changes in it right now.
Courtney,
Yes,
Matt, Dave Mitchell. We secured the 20, in the moves that we made to secure the $21 million.
as long as we let it, which means we have to fully fund it.
Yeah, and at that time, I thought we had moved some projects to come close to that figure.
We did, and now we have a $10 million increase
Okay, in
in the project
now, is that
estimate.
$10 million affecting the $21 million, or is that an overreach through the whole project?
It's an overage on the entire project.
But it doesn't affect the 21 at this time. right?
No, we did ask for an increase. So because we had originally asked for $25 million on the build grant, and FHWA did have an extra pot of build money. We did ask for the $4 million. We were not awarded. We were notified. I received the email yesterday that said we were not awarded any additional money over the 21 million. So right now, when we submitted our build grant application, our estimate for the entire project from design the whole way through was $61 million. That was it was roughly, I'm going to deal in round numbers, trying to make it easier. It was $61 million. That included all design, utilities, right of way, and construction. At that point in time, we weren't entirely sure if we were going to be able to do any of the pedestrian bridges as a part of that project. And since then, we committed to doing the Holland pedestrian bridge as a part of the initial project. We had increases to cover right of way, design, not a huge amount in the grand scope of this project, but we had an initial increase that took us up to the $43 million, $46 million. We moved all of that around. That was just for construction. Now our construction estimate is coming in at $54.6 million for the construction. It's coming in at $90 million for the entire project, including just the Holland pedestrian bridge. That does not include Sassafras, and it does not include any potential for any sort of pedestrian bridge or anything at State Street in the future. So that is just what we were looking at, letting on September 29th and constructing through 2025. As a part of that, we have received a $21 million build grant to go towards that $90 million. We've received $23.6 million in discretionary funds from the Secretary of Transportation. We've received $15 million in discretionary funds from the governor's office and DCED combined. And now we've received $2.5 million in discretionary funds to go towards the pedestrian bridge at Holland from the Deputy Secretary of Multimodal. So of the $90 million we have gotten, I didn't do the math in my head, but let's say 23, 38, 39, 59, $62 million in discretionary funding to go towards that, with the rest being funds on the regional tip. Of that, we have a potential of another $11 million being gifted to us at the end of this federal fiscal year as a part of the obligation authority, which would take us up to $73 million of the 90 funded for the project. The commitment we have for the build grant is we have to let the project, and it has to be in its entirety over $60 million. And we have to commit to doing the scope of what we originally had stated, which is that basically we need to do the central project from Holland to Sassafras. And we have committed as a part of that with environmental and everything else to do the pedestrian bridge at Holland as a part of the original project, correct? Yes, okay. So for us to get the $21 million in the build grant, we have to let a project that includes the work between those three intersections, including the separated grade crossing and the pedestrian bridge. And we have to let it by September 29th of this year. And that's how we can get the $21 million, yes.
No pressure, right?
No, we are not feeling any pressure whatsoever in our office, are we? Another day. Typical day. I can tell you, right now I was looking at 531, we have going on the Depot Road project that's supposed to be letting in the spring. We have Zuck, we have 20 in Girard. We are looking at still letting those this coming spring with the construction starting next year. 832, the goal is to not move the Presque Isle project. We're looking at cash flowing things further out. It's something that we historically didn't do, but we're able to do it. We tried to be, as a region, a pay as you go. So as we get the money, we pay for the project. We don't cash flow things out to get more projects out the door and pay for them over a longer period of time. That's an option. We have that option. So we can do that. The goal is that we wouldn't be changing construction years for any 23 or 24 projects. And we may just have to defer projects that were further out in 25 and further out in order to do it. But the projects we have in design, we are committed to getting them out the door as we have discussed.
Well, I would like to mention really fast that we did adopt our long-range transportation plan this year, and it included a lot of new priorities for the region that we were hoping to get on the tip once it's live in October. So if this almost $11 million would not come from obligation authority, I would basically that those projects will not, because they're not in design yet, those will not go forward. So just to let everyone know,
The Cranberry intersection will still be going.
Oh, okay.
We have found that we're adding that project to the tip for it to be done. So
Okay.
because we have the time frame of 2 years, it needs to be done. I am still
perfect.
planning on
Okay.
programming that particular project. So the number one priority is still looking to be added, but we wouldn't be adding additional.
Okay, so that's things like in Summit here, the lights on Peach Street, a few other, high priority projects. If the worst case scenario would happen, so basically, if you remember in the LRTP, there was a fully funded list that would no longer be fully funded. That would definitely have a lot of implications for future project programming. And I know in the past, this group in 2017, the MPO voted the Bayfront as the #1 project. But there's been a lot of turnover since 2017, including myself. So I hope that I would like to know if it's still this group's #1 priority to go all in with the Bayfront or focus somewhere else, because that is what this group is about, and making those choices and priorities. Although there's a lot of implications of not giving this money clearly, as Courtney said. We would lose the build grant, all of the money already invested in the project. There's a lot of implications for not doing it, but there's also a lot of implications for doing it if this obligation authority doesn't come through. So
I like to speak as a small municipality. I mean, our liquid fuels, we actually only get probably $100,000, maybe a little bit more. But when we come and ask for a little bit of money, we can never get it. And then I sit here and listen to all these millions of dollars being spent on this Bayfront Highway. I agree the Bayfront Highway is top priority, but speaking as a small municipality, we need money too. So when we ask for money and we don't get it, we sit here and scratch our head and say, why, you know? And this is a prime reason when we're putting all this money into the Bayfront. So I think you need to look at small municipalities too and start putting some of this money into the municipalities too, the small municipalities. That's just my opinion.
I mean, we've had a 30% reduction in our state liquid fuels, and we're
Yeah.
feeling it, and our fuel costs are through the ceiling. Our budget is tough to meet, you know, I mean, I know, looking just at our fuel alone, we're over budget already, and it's just August, and you know, it just seems like all the townships are getting dinged and dinged and dinged, and we're on a slow burn. And then all of a sudden, any hope of taking on some of these projects that there's no way we can afford to do are now gone, you know? So, I mean, it is a tough one.
So, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna state that the costs of all of the items with inflation, including fuel costs, are hitting us just as hard. That's part of what the increase is definitely to cover. We are not anticipating needing to go or to look at anything with the local federal aid route line item. So those funds will still be available for municipalities to apply for when it comes to that. And that was just what I was gonna mention. Go ahead, Tim.
The 7 projects that could be affected.
Yes.
Okay. If they were not affected, and let's say we said, no, you're not getting the $10 million. Would those projects, for the most part, be completed then? And does PennDOT have a desire to finish some projects before we move on to another one?
Well, that's a complicated question to answer because we have gone for
But
a
from
lot
a
of discretion.
municipality?
Correct.
No, it's not.
Well, it is
But-
for us because we've gone for a lot of discretionary funds. So we as a state agency have put out a lot of money for, to go for grants,
Right.
to go for things that have not come off the regional tip. So we're looking at a opportunity to get a $50 million investment with no regional capital. You know what I mean? Just $50 million going towards that project that didn't come from any of the regional coffers, which is huge for a region such as us. And this is by far one of the largest, besides an interstate project, that we have ever taken on. And to be honest, I mean, we are fully invested in the project. It actually wasn't something that came up in any of when we started this project. It was not something that came from an LRTP in the study that was done, not actually from priorities on the LRTP or anything from the state. So it becomes more complicated because there are some projects on that list we have to move to a January let because we're not going to have them ready to go. And so I'm looking at moving them to help with this, but we already were going to have to move them because we weren't going to be able to let them December 15th. We need to let them in January. Therefore, I have to move the money on the tip. So they have to be funded because October is our cutoff. So there's more than just the hope of finishing. We have projects in design we were going to need to move. And for us, moving things from a December let to a January through March let doesn't really affect us because we're not putting them into construction until April next year anyway. So as long as the notice to proceed lets us to start work next summer, we are not any further behind in our way we look and approach things than we were if we let it in October, November, December of this year.
Who's to say the 7 projects costs don't go up then.
All projects costs are gonna go up.
So,
I'll just tell
So
you that
that-
now.
well,
I
yeah,
already know some
so-
of those estimates. Like I can tell you that the Depot Road estimate right now is $10 million.
so, you know,
Everything is going up.
how much further is that project gonna
Yeah.
get pushed down the
Now,
road? So
what we
why,
can-
in a way, why don't we, let's get these done?
Well, no
and
matter
I-
what, we're gonna have to fund them. And what we're looking at losing if we don't let this project is $11 million I can't put on other projects. If we don't let this project by September 29th,
Yeah.
we are out $11 million on the regional tip that could have gone towards other projects. Like we have been committed to the project up until now. And we had committed that we were going to see it through as far as we are concerned. And so we dedicated $11 million that has not been, spent or obligated at this point in time. And if we don't let it by the 29th, we will lose that $11 million that we could have spent on other regional projects. So we don't want to lose the $11 million just because we don't want to put another $11 million onto it. Does that make sense? Like, okay, so the $11 million you're talking, it's already lost. If we don't let this project, we've lost that $11 million that we're talking. It didn't get spent on projects that it could have, and it won't go anywhere else.
And Dave Mitchell, on the Build Back Better, the infrastructure bill.
Mhm.
I know how slow Congress is in getting money codified to go out. It takes a year and a half usually. What have you been seeing as far as that amount of money? What kind of pipeline do you see that maybe some of this could kick in down the road to help us on that next transition?
Well, I haven't even started looking at the new LRTP, to be completely honest, because we can't look at doing anything until October. We'd already had the tip set. But things such as any projects that we have on there that could potentially go for any sort of HSIP funds or any sort of grant funds, we really in the district are trying, we are looking at taking some classes to be able to become better at looking at the grants and the benefit cost analysis so that we can do that internally, because the goal really is to get us to leverage as much of that competitive funding that's coming from the infrastructure bill to come back here so that we can continue to move some of the projects forward. And we are looking at trying to incorporate as much HSIP funds as we can on projects. It's not going to be fast or easy, but it will be something that projects that we haven't scoped yet, we should be able to incorporate better. Projects that we've scoped or in design, our chances of getting additional funding for those are pretty slim. We've already moved past. But if we can look forward at what funding opportunities are going to come up, we might be able to apply for some of those infrastructure bills grants and notice of funding opportunities for those and advance them if we can get them, discussed, and we can figure out what the communities want with us. We have become aware that we are not going to be able to move forward with a lot of these projects and do what we and the municipalities want if we don't apply for competitive grants or help the municipalities apply for competitive grants as a part of it. Like that's just going to be our new normal, is applying these build type things in most of our larger projects, especially with inflation.
Emily, is Matt the only one online?
No, there are others.
There
online.
are others?
Yes, there's 17 total participants.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Does anybody there have anything
I
they want to
guess
say?
my thought is that, I mean, I still, I think we should call for the special meeting on Tuesday. And, and I'd like to, you maybe just see like the projects that are being affected, how long have they been on the tip? That type of thing. And just, let's look at it and encourage, some participation on Tuesday. I mean, echoing what Paul and Mark, I mean, the Bayfront project is more of a regional project, I guess. The projects that are going to be affected are more of a local flavor to them, but I think that more discussion and more thought needs to be paid attention to here.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I mean, I agree. And, you know, I think ultimately it's important to point out that voting to make any of these changes has to happen with the coordinating committee, not with our committee, technical advisory. So, you know, obviously you as the chair, you know, can call a special meeting. I don't disagree that it's probably smart, because I think that the coordinating committee is larger than this group, and they deserve to have all of this information and be able to ask questions and get answers before they vote on it. So I think, you know, as far as our role as the technical advisory committee, you know, after listening to Courtney, and thank you, Courtney. First of all, I want to thank you because I know you're on the spot, and I want to compliment you because it was a difficult thing to explain, and I think you did really well. But you know, I guess I would entertain a motion from this committee. We could give a recommendation if we wanted to the coordinating committee. Obviously, most of our members here are also coordinating committee members, but there are more than just us. So I think our role would be, if somebody wants to make a motion, you know, for a recommendation on what to do, but then we'll go forward with the course of, you know, if Tim wants to call a special meeting and have the coordinating committee have their vote.
Hey,
this is Jason. Can I say a couple of things?
Yep.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just want to also really thanks to Courtney for going through all this and explaining it all. And I think everybody understands the great importance of the Bayfront project to the entire region. But I also hear all the other comments coming from the townships about these other regional projects. So I think all these things are really important. But I do want to just say that, you know, the Bayfront, as somebody that's been involved with all those details from the beginning, I think it's important that we also make sure that project gets pushed across the finish line. So those are my comments. I just want to give everybody my thanks. So
Thanks, Jason. I thought I heard somebody beginning to make a motion. I'm not sure.
I was going to make the motion to hold the coordinating committee meeting, a special coordinating committee meeting that Emily will assist in advertising.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All in favor, or I'm sorry, do we have any discussion on that before we take a vote?
This is Jeff representing Corey. Can I ask a question? With this motion, are we also providing a recommendation today from this committee, or are we saying specifically we won't make a recommendation?
That was not part of this motion. Right now, I think what we're, you know, doing is voting to hold a special meeting. If somebody wants to make a motion to make a recommendation, I would, you know, entertain that after we take this vote.
And with the coordinating committee meeting, we would have, I guess, a detailed list of what was pushed or moved, even if they were already idle. Is that right?
Yep, yes, I will. My goal is I'll go back today and tomorrow and try to develop something, get it sent out through Emily so everyone can review it before Tuesday. That would potentially show what happens if we get full obligation authority and we don't have to use 23 tip funds. And then what happens if we do have to use 23 tips? So best case and worst case. And just so everybody knows, I will also be attending the special meeting in person because I just think it's easier to answer questions and everything. So I will be here on Tuesday for the meeting so I can answer any questions or pull anything up anyone wants. In case that makes a difference if you want to do hybrid or come in person.
Or the information you're providing, can you look at it from both sides and not just the impact to the Bayfront project?
Can you clarify what you were asking me? Sorry.
Just like if we don't allocate the $10 million to the Bayfront project, here's what happens, but
Oh,
also
so, yes.
if
because
we
that's what
allocate the
happens.
10,
Yes.
what's the trickle
Yes,
down on the other
Because
side?
what will happen is if we obligate the 10 and we get obligation authority,
Yep,
that is just like if we didn't obligate it. So yes, I will
Okay.
have that on there.
cool.
Mhm. Yep.
So basically, are you asking like if the MPO voted
To
no?
not move forward
Yeah.
with it, what would happen with the 23 check? Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. Yes, I will add that on there.
Thank you.
No
And
problem.
really quick, I just wanted to mention, there is a time crunch on this. That is why, we're even
Yes,
talking
because
about
I need to
special meeting.
obligate the money by August 25th.
okay. And our next coordinating
Yeah,
committee.
Matt and Emily, this is Kevin McCullough from Program Center and Central Office. One other aspect of this too to keep in mind is that all federal funds expended on the project, if it's not built, they would be subject to payback. So I can't tell you what that means because this is a big project and there's a lot of different funding that's been utilized in the pre-construction phases, but that's something else to keep in mind. So I'll just leave it at that.
I'll put that on the document to the amount of federal funds expended towards design.
Yep. Thanks, Courtney.
No problem. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, we have a motion on the table. Unless anybody has anything else, I guess I will call for the vote. All in favor of holding a special meeting to discuss this with the coordinating committee?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. I guess the other, question is, does this committee feel they have enough information right now to make a recommendation to the coordinating committee, or would you rather just wait to, get more information? If somebody wants to make a motion, that's, I'd open the floor. Okay, silence is noted, and I think we will probably hold off, and then, after the meeting of the coordinating committee, they can make their vote. Well, thank you again, everybody. I know this is a tough subject, and thanks again to Courtney and everybody at PennDOT, for all of your input. I guess we'll move on to number 4 on the agenda, the local federal aid route applications. Emily, if you'd like to take that.
Yes, hello. And just quickly, I wanted to mention, I do have a hybrid meeting set up preemptively for Tuesday for the Bayfront. I will send that out to the coordinating committee, but it will be next Tuesday from 2 to 3. It will be hybrid, both online and here at Summit Township. So I will send out that information, but just to let you know, that is the schedule. So hopefully we can get a quorum of the coordinating committee then. All right, so moving on to the local federal aid route rankings. We just got these in this week. So thank you so much to PennDOT. There were 53 segments applied for this year, which is a lot more than in previous years. So it took a while to drive all of these routes and rank them by condition. In addition, there were many that were 5s, the worst condition. So they further refined them to be a decimal point. So really the worst were first. And then where there still were ties, they are ranked by ADT. So based on that ranking and the amount of money available, which is $500,000 for the low ADT and $500,000 for the high ADT, on the high ADT route, the first 3 could be funded over 2 years. So Naval Road in Harbor Creek, McClelland Ave in the city of Erie. That total would be about $577,000. So there's a little overrun. So there'll have to be some discussions with the city of Erie about whether they're still willing to take the funds with the additional money. But in general, those 3 look like they could receive funds. And then on the low ADT, looks like the top 5 could be fully funded. So they are all in the city of Erie. And that cost would be $484,000. So there's a little left over for Wesleyville for their Euclid Boulevard, but I don't know if that will be enough that you would be willing to take that money or not. So I think they'll, based on the discussions of our inflation that Courtney has been mentioning, it might be good if PennDOT and myself and maybe the municipalities could sit down and make sure that these are actual accurate cost estimates for year 2 based on inflation. I don't know how you've done it in other locations, Courtney, for the year 2, if you just add an arbitrary inflation marker to those projects.
Nope. What we have done, so the examples I can use are Northwest, because we do it as a 2-year there, and then the STU funding that we do in Mercer County. And basically, we just award what the ask is, and then anything that's over and above. What I think we were going to attempt to do for this is to cash flow these, because we're looking at 3 projects, technically is what I'd be programming. Because I would do the city of Erie's 2 high, and then the city of Erie's 5 low as 2 separate. We would fund them so they could put all that in 2023. So, and then cash flow them into 2024. So you would be looking at all of them being funded with what funds we would have in the 2023 tip.
Okay.
So I don't know how much, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be a 2-year inflation, it would just be the one.
Okay. And I know there was a note on Miller Avenue that there were loop sensors visible that were not technically in the project cost. So I might have to circle back with the city to see that cost might have to increase on Miller Ave, which is the #1, the absolute worst of the low ADT routes. So there might be just some looking over all of this stuff to make sure everything is in line before actual numbers are ready. But again, the coordinating committee is the one that has to make the votes to award any of these funds. So in the meantime, we can have some of those discussions so the numbers can be in place to be voted on at the next meeting.
Anyone?
Emily, go ahead.
Nope, I was just gonna ask if anyone had any questions.
Is there any chance that there's going to be any increase in federal aid money or not?
Well, it comes from a line item off of the tip. We've kind of stated that we were gonna look at $500,000 for all of them, or 500,000 per year, continuing for the next 4 years. So at this time, I don't think that we're looking at any additional increase in local federal aid route, but if we were to receive an increase in tip funds, you know, that is always a possibility. I won't say no.
Okay.
Okay, I was just going to ask Emily, I know that when we talked about, we discussed the agenda, didn't have the rankings yet, so we didn't indicate that needed a vote from us. Do you vote from the TAC recommendation or not?
We can, or we can just wait for the coordinating committee, because this wasn't sent out with a meeting packet because it's so recent. I think probably just holding off at the TAC level, unless anyone feels strongly and wants to make a motion at this point. But I think just given the fact that no one was really able to review this ahead of time, that it should just go to the coordinating committee.
Okay, I'm fine with that unless anybody, wants to make a motion. All right, not hearing anyone, I guess we'll move on to this agenda item. This is the local use subcommittee update, and I'll turn it over to Leanne Parmenter for that.
Okay. So the local use fee committee met July 18th. John Tushak used to be the chair. Now that he's retired, I was the lucky one that was elected as the chairperson. So I'm going to go over the 4 motions that came out of the meeting. First, we discussed the current selection process and how the projects get funded. They're prioritized based on ADT, the length of the detours, and the conditions that are provided by PennDOT. And so a motion was made to keep that current selection process. I don't know if anybody has any questions, or I should just continue going over all the motions.
Yeah, I think continue. And if anybody does have questions, please feel free to ask Leanne.
Okay. Emily had proposed a change in how the cash flow is programmed. We wanted to assign it on a phase process instead of funding the full project, because some of the projects were moving slowly. And we also wanted to put a 5-year cap on the projects that they needed to be completed within that 5 years. So a motion was made for the cash flow to be done by phase and to have the 5-year time limit. That was then the third is Emily had presented a financial report. So right now there's $925,230 in unassigned funds. An additional $2,680,269 have not been spent, and now our total balance now is $3,608,499.21. So we made a motion to assign funds to 4 projects. $183,074 for the Cockwa Avenue Bridge for final design. $125,000 for engineering of the Wellington Street Bridge in Northeast Borough. $125,000 for engineering of Francis Road Bridge in Girard Township. $125,000 for engineering of Donation Road Bridge in Green Township. So the motion was to fund those 4 projects. We also looked at 3 other bridges. The Union LaBeouf Road Timber Bridge. Initially, that was thought to be too expensive with $2,264,000, but because of some federal funds, the BOF funds and the BRIP funds, we had made a motion that this bridge should be applied for in the TIP. So I don't know, Emily, if you have any other discussion on that, but we've recommended that this bridge should go on the TIP for funding. The other 2 bridges, go ahead.
No, exactly. Right now there are line items in our 2023 TIP of BOF funds and BRIP funds, which are extra base funds we did receive from the federal government from the infrastructure bill last year. So right now they're unassigned to any projects, but they are in the TIP as line items. So the committee recommended this bridge be a project using those line items.
The other 2 bridges were West 4th Street Bridge in Waterford Borough, but there was some redundancy issue, and talked about having a redundancy study done. And the Bort Road Bridge has some complexity issues with the railroad, so we didn't think it would meet that 5-year time frame. So at this time, we didn't have it funded. So those were the 4 motions that came out of the subcommittee meeting.
So is there any further discussion about those motions? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, did somebody have any discussion? Well, I think if nobody has any questions, I would make a motion that we accept the recommendations, these 4 recommendations of the local use fee subcommittee.
I don't know. I know that the official vote will be when we meet with the coordinating committee.
Yes.
But one of the things that I would like, the committee decided not to make a motion on it, but it will need to be decided by the coordinating committee if we are going to, when we fund one of these projects, specifically, the first one we're looking at is the Union LaBeouf Road Timber Bridge, whether or not the municipalities will need to have a match in order for us to fund the project on the tip. The discussion that we had in different districts do it. Some districts don't do any local bridge projects such as this. Some do it and they pay for it with different ways. And the municipalities have anything from a $0 match, 5% or 20%. Our ask would be that we do feel that it is beneficial for the municipalities to have a part in the project as it's going forward. And we would like to see a 5% match for the tip funding, with the possibility of applying for County Act 13 funds if they don't have the 5%, but it would be 5% across all phases. So that's how we do it in the Northwest. And how we have put forward some of them in Mercer as well, is that any municipal bridge that we would work on, that we take on and are doing with tip funds, it would be 95% tip funded and 5% local funded. So just wanted to put that out there for thought.
Okay. Well, I think, I had a motion to at least up the 4 recommendations, local use fee, or the subcommittee recommend those to the coordinating committee. So do I have a second on that?
Jason, I'll second it.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote on accepting these 4 recommendations and making them to the coordinating committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then I think on to what Court mentioned. Do we want to make a recommendation to the coordinating committee about the local match required if funds are used for the bridge replacement? Courtney mentioned 5%. Yes, I will make a motion that we ask for a 5% match from local municipalities when we use TIP fund. Before we go much further, Emily, would you mind just explaining, or so everybody's aware about the Act 13 funds and how those could come into play if local municipalities don't have a match?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So as most of you know, Erie County has the Act 13 program, which is the Marcellus Shale impact fees that we receive that go towards locally owned structurally deficient bridges. So as a locally owned structurally deficient bridge, any of these bridges would qualify for Act 13 funding to reimburse their local match. So the municipalities would still have to pay up front, but then they could be reimbursed with the county's Act 13 funds as a local fund. So we do have that available to them. And I have reached out to both Union Township and LaBeouf Township, who co-own this bridge, and they both understand that. They both know about the Act 13 program and that they may have to take out a loan for the 5%, but if they're getting reimbursed for the funds, then that would still be amenable to them.
Okay, thanks, Emily. So the motion is to recommend the 5% match. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? And I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Leanne, or do we need any other recommendations from the subcommittee to be voted?
I don't think so, but I wanted to mention that this is a volunteer subcommittee. So if anybody else wants to be involved in the discussion, you know, contact Emily or myself and I think we can vote in the first meeting in 2023 in the coordinating committee. So come join the fun.
Yeah. Emily, would you mind going back up to the first page that has the membership list? Because I think we talked about the fact that, you know, some people are no longer here, or, you know, like Leanne mentioned, if anybody's interested and would like to the subcommittee, please express your interest. You could be placed on it at the beginning of 23.
Likewise, those who have had their fill of the subcommittee are welcome to remove themselves from the subcommittee.
Noted. Thank you, Emily. Okay, I guess we'll move on to number 6 on the agenda, which is the public participation plan update. Emily?
Yes, that's me. Thank you for those 9 people of the voting members who took my survey that I sent out to begin the public participation plan update. Our last official update of the public participation plan was in 2007. So we are officially out of date and need to start the process to review our policies and what needs to be done. So I was excited to see that of the 9 people, 8 said they wanted more emails from me, which I was a little surprised about. I know lots of people's inboxes get flooded quite frequently, but I am happy to send out more emails when things change, like voting members change or meeting recordings are uploaded, or I post meeting summaries or minutes. I can start sending that out, or any funding opportunities. I can send emails. That is not a problem. The goals of the public participation plan. So I went ahead and crafted some goals based on what was in our original public participation plan. Those were to document specific public involvement procedures, strategies, and outcomes. Define a proactive public involvement process, especially to underserved populations, and ensure that the MPO complies with all federal, state, and local regulations and applicable laws. So most people thought all of these were good. I would like to ask, since we're all in the room, is there anything that is missing? Is there any objective that someone else would like to be in our public participation plan? All right, well, if you think of anything, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Emily. I'll do some digging there, but I think what you have forward right now looks good. This is Brandon from Central Office.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, for updates needed, I was pleasantly surprised that everyone that took the survey is comfortable with most of the logo and Facebook and website. We do piggyback on a lot of the county services, including the website with the tech support. That also means that to put anything on our website, we have to go through IT, and sometimes that can be clunky. But I did want to bring up the logo. I know our logo is a little outdated, but it is useful. It has a lot of good information. It's clear in black and white, and we have it on the top of the agenda. But this is something I think we probably could change in-house if anyone had the inclination to change. I really quickly put 4 little options up on the screen. And if you are in person today, I did print them out in the back as well. These 4 options, as well as our current logo and letterhead, as well as if you want something completely different, a professional to come in and redesign the logo. I am not a professional, clearly, but if anyone would like to change the logo, I am planning to present this at the coordinating committee. So these options, and everyone can vote on which logo they like or none of the above. So I just wanted to give a little feeler for that. I will say these are based on the county's design guidelines. So as the county has certain colors, certain fonts that they use to label everything. So there's a cohesion of visual identification of the county. So I really was piggybacking off of that. So things like the fonts and the colors are specified by the county. And I think it's good to brand different organizations with a certain visual connection in order to cue, especially the public, into who we are and what we do. And if that is using our current, the black and white MPO, that's fine with me. We can keep doing that. But I just wanted to bring that up to this committee. All right, the
Are you
last,
looking for input right now?
yes, if you want to have input right now, please share.
You know, I think the original one is very classy. It's always been a eye catcher to me, but it is hard to read. The number 2, option B, it's very modern and nice, but it says Erie MPO, which it leaves out the county in the bold print, which I don't particularly think that, I think that this has to be holistic. But I know later on it says Erie County, but there is always a lot of misinterpretation when you just have the word Erie.
Yes.
We've gone through that in many other areas.
And I will say our official title is the Erie Area Transportation Study is the, so we are because Erie, we are an urbanized area
Yes.
that doesn't actually incorporate the entire county, but the MPO does incorporate the entire county. So technically we are Erie area. So that just adds another layer of confusion. So,
Option D, just ended up here. Option D does define highway. It's very simple. It's a little bit more colorful. So I'm just throwing this out here for the committee. So take a closer look at it.
I like C.
okay. Well, if the committee would like to take a motion, we can. I know, again, this hasn't been sent out with the meeting materials, so people didn't have a chance to really look at these yet. But if anyone would like to state which one they like, you're welcome to do so.
Hey, this is Jason. I just have one comment, if I could.
Yes.
I just noticed that I can't quite read that, but does that say since 19, is that 1964?
Yes, 1964.
I mean, is there, I don't know, I'm just wondering if, just to keep kind of the history, whether that could appear on any of the conceptual ones or what the group thinks about it.
Mr. Mitchell said yes, he likes that idea, Jason. Anyone else have a feeling about the date since 1964?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it'd be nice to keep that somewhere in there.
Option D, I think, defines the mission clearly. It could be expanded out a little bit with, some graphic. I don't think you have to hire an outside consultant. A lot of times that's a lot of money wasted.
Well, does anyone want to make a motion, or do we just wait and have them out and we can have a chance to look at it and come with some thoughts for the next meeting?
Emily, my thought is, this isn't a pressing issue, but I think you're gonna have more input on this than you are on the $10 million. So I would give it time, let people take a look at them. I really do.
Okay, So no motion now. Let people think about this. Okay, and the last one, what are the barriers to public participation? And most people said lack of interest in transportation planning, all that nitty gritty of the $10 million. So if there is anything that anyone has a suggestion about making transportation planning exciting, I am more than welcome to entertain that, to make this more exciting and engaging. That is what I wanted to present. The next steps are actually surveying the public, asking how they like to be contacted, what is the best means that they would like communications to be through, and how best to reach underserved populations, etc. So I'll keep working on the public participation plan and have more information at the next meeting.
Can I interject here, and the elected officials can probably commiserate? Unless there's a pothole in front of your house, people don't care about transportation, or there's a bottleneck or something else. And the biggest problem you have in trying to get it out to the public is they don't pay attention. But if you have a public hearing on potholes in your township, you'll fill the building. But if you have a hearing on the 10-year plan, you'll have two people sitting in the audience. So the reason I say this is we shouldn't beat ourselves up because of this lack of public participation, because this is, I mean, I think any of us that are elected officials have always seen that, you know, we have these huge issues and nobody shows up because they're not controversial. And then you have a little issue that means nothing. And, you know, you're yelled at for an hour. And I think that's, unless Emily wants to go out and spark problems and fill the room with, I mean, I think that this has been a fair project in that we do have advocates on the other side who have voiced their opinion, and they have been listened to and have been allowed to voice their opinion. So I think it's a very open process. The only reason I'm talking about it now is we can't beat ourselves up. You know, we can provide it for the people, but we can't make them read it and react to it.
Thank you. That is a good point. You're right. You can put the information out there, but you can't really force people to come and be engaged. Well, thank you, Emily. I think you did a great job, and I would agree with Mayor Mitt that the logos were really well done. I don't know that we need a professional designer because you really have some talent there. So thank you. Moving on, agenda item number 7, other business. We'll start with the federal bill grants and resources. That'll be Ronique Bishop from the Federal Highway Administration. Ronique.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Okay,
we
perfect.
Can.
Okay, so a couple of quick announcements. One thing is recently USDOT announced the Protect Formula program. So the acronym for that is Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. So the formula program funding, there's a oh man, I'm blanking out. A fact sheet about that, and a notice of funding will come out later on, but and just some background on it is this is funding over 5 years for states to make transportation infrastructure more resilient to future weather events and other natural disasters. So in general, projects that are eligible would include highway and transit projects, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and port facilities, including those that help improve evacuations or disaster relief. So that was sent out, And it's also on, like I said, the fact sheet about it is on Federal Highways website, and also on the bill website that I always talk that I'm always talking about. And this is a discretionary program. And kind of on the back of the bill website, some more fact sheets have been uploaded to that bill website. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so certain ones include, or some updates include, like the carbon reduction program fact sheet is out there. Let me see, the Reconnecting Communities fact sheet is out there, emergency relief program, and the one that I just talked about, Protect, that's also on there. So more things are coming out as more guidance is being put out. And like I said, the notice of funding is for Protect is forthcoming. Another thing that I wanted to mention, and our planning team at Federal Highways just alerted Jackie Coons-Fillion at PennDOT about this, but so you'll probably hear this again, but Federal Highways is hosting 2 webinars on the greenhouse gas emissions performance measure, notice of proposed rulemaking. So you know how there's the performance measures for safety and bridge and pavement and performance measures for system performance. So there's a new notice of proposed rulemaking that Federal Highway is proposing. Go ahead. Sorry, did you have questions? I'm kind of like going. I guess I'll just finish my thought, and then this is the last announcement that I have, and then I can take questions. But Federal Highways is proposing to amend its regulations governing national performance measures to establish a method for measurement and reporting for greenhouse gas emissions associated with transportation under the highways title of the United States Code. So this is specifically to establish declining carbon dioxide targets. So there's a webinar to talk more about that. The webinar is going to be on Tuesday, August 23rd, and again on Wednesday, August 24th. I can send this information out to everybody that was on the invite, the links to this for you guys to attend, or if you have any questions, of course, reach out to, the PennDOT central office, or of course, us at Federal Highways. But this was just released like today, earlier this morning. So like I said, the planning team here, we just alerted central office about it. So you guys may be hearing it again from Jackie, but since I'm here today, I wanted to let you guys know about that. And since this notice of proposed rulemaking, Federal Highways, like it's out for public comment right now. So we don't have any extra things to say about it other than what's available. So as I said, like if you're able to attend the webinar, please do so. If you have any additional questions, just let me know and I'll try my best to answer them with the information we have now. But that concludes my remarks that I wanted to share with you guys. And I'll follow up in an email as well. So just to make it easier for everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ronique. I appreciate the update. Does anybody have any questions for Ronique before she goes? Oh, well, thank you again.
Thank you so
moving
much.
on. Yeah. And then the next item is the traffic technologies. Emily, or you going to speak that, or?
Yeah, I can just say a few words. This is a new state grant that was just announced. It is a lot like Green Light Go, but there's no local match required. And you can also use it to install signals, which Green Light Go is a maintenance program. So it looks like a very exciting opportunity. And you do have to submit a pre-application scoping form. You can do that right now. That is open for the scoping form submission. So if anyone is interested in this grant, I would highly recommend clicking on the link in the agenda and finding that application pre-scoping form and submitting it. That's all I have to say. I don't have a lot of insights on this unless anyone else here knows more about this program than I do. But it looks like an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, and it is exciting. You can use it for installation too. It's a good opportunity for municipalities. Moving on, next, the Major Bridge 3 status, PennDOT staff. Kevin, is that your brand?
Yep, that'll be me. Yep, this is Kevin McCullough and PennDOT Program Center here in Central Office out of Harrisburg. Just give you a couple of quick updates here. I'll go through the Major Bridge P3 status. This is a quick one. We've been talking about this obviously for a while, and this was the ability to do this was put into place, nearly 10 years ago, and we've done several things through the P3, which is the public-private partnership. Opportunity that was provided as part of Act 89 back in 10 years ago or so officially. As I think most people have been following along with this. In the Northwest region, there were 2 bridges that were selected for further study that were up on Interstate 80 there. Nothing in Erie County. And actually Western PA got off pretty late on the original selection. Again, in summary, the idea was to move forward with tolling these particular structures to pay for the replacement of them utilizing tolling. And then once the structure was paid for, the tolling booths would basically be removed once that, once all the construction and pre-construction was paid for. So this has been kind of going on for a while, and we've been kind of giving updates on it as we go. And I guess to put it succinctly, just recently, PennDOT announced that it would no longer pursue the tolling of the subject 9 bridges. So there was a ruling that came out from a judge, and that will not be appealed. So I would just say, keep posted. The Pathways Initiative is still in place. These bridges all need to be worked on. So there will, I'm sure there'll be other proposals that I'm sure will involve the legislature as far as, how we fund these and how we move forward to fund these particular bridges. There's a lot of things happening in transportation funding now. And as you know, with electric vehicles coming on board here, and that'll be my next topic I'll talk about, that reduces the amount of gasoline taxes that go into the federal, basically the federal gas, the federal gas money that's distributed out. That's money that we use on the tip that we talk about all the time. All that federal money comes from those gas taxes. And likewise, the state funding matches, multimodal, all the state matches that we use for federal funds and for the programs that we talk about all the time that involve state funding. That comes from our motor license fund, which is also paid for with gas taxes. And if you're not utilizing gasoline, you're not paying those taxes. So that source of funding is, I won't say it's in jeopardy, but it is flat and going down, even with increased vehicle travel due to, again, improvements in gas mileage on cars that do use gasoline. And also with EV vehicles coming on board. So we'll keep you posted as things develop here. But as of right now, you won't be hearing anything else about those 9 bridges and that program to move forward with those bridges utilizing tolling. So we'll be moving on. So next thing I'll talk about is NEVI. And said, hey, guess what? We have another acronym. So this is, again, I get tired of hearing all these acronyms. And with the IIJA and bill, I mean, we have tons of new acronyms for you. So this is really the, an opportunity to, I guess, give electric vehicles a boost and make them more useful and kind of promote them moving forward. And it's seen as a way to reduce greenhouse gases and reduce emissions. And I won't get into the politics of that, but there are arguments that, well, wait a second, the electricity has to come from somewhere, but I'm not going to get into that. This is what we have. This is part of the IIJA bill. And I'll just, again, I'll kind of go over where we are on the federal side of things and then where we are specifically with the state plan. So as of August 2nd, these were all due by the end of July. These particular plans coming from all 50 states, the Department of Transportation and Department of Energy announced on August 2nd that all 50 states, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, submitted electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plans. And you must have a plan in place in order to unlock this first round. And we say first round, this is part of IIJA and bill of $5 billion in formula funding provided through the IIJA or /bill. So this is again another formula program that you have to have a plan in place in order to be able to access these funds. So again, I jump down to the Pennsylvania part, and Pennsylvania is set to receive and distribute 171.5 million in these national, I didn't do the acronym, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, NEVI formula funds for EV charging infrastructure over the next 5 years. So we have a plan in place on where we want to put these. That'll be reviewed and approved, and then we can start to access money in order to put this infrastructure in place. There's also going to be 2.5 billion available nationally in discretionary grant funding too. So there's discretionary grant funding attached to this as well. So, and just to give you an idea, just over the past couple of years, we've tripled the number of electric vehicles that are registered in Pennsylvania. We're currently at more than 31,000 vehicles, which it is a small percentage of the registrations, but we are seeing increases of that in Pennsylvania and nationally. So, getting to the PennDOT NEVI plan, there was a lot of outreach with regards to that. So PennDOT, along with the stakeholders, developed this EV mobility plan, and that's all available. We can provide links to that for you, and I think Brandon may throw a couple links out for you so that you can, if you want to take a look at this and learn more about it. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail, but I would say that PennDOT, following the guidance issued from US DOT, is basically going to be collaboratively working with DEP to help PennDOT evaluate EV proposals in accordance with the federal guidance. So the idea here is to make EVs more affordable, which there's obviously the idea is that as production goes up, hopefully there'll be more affordable EVs available. It is a cost. They are cost prohibitive in a lot of cases right now. This piece makes EV charging more accessible. And we're also talking about fleet electrification. So you're starting to see, like the city of Pittsburgh just announced some full electrification of some of their some of their city vehicles that they utilize that are local network that don't need to be able to travel long distances. They can charge and operate within, smaller areas that would be ideal for electrification. And those are traditionally areas where you have heavy emissions loading too. And part of this too is to invest in traditionally underserved, low income, vulnerable population. We talk about that. That's a big, there's a big push of that in the IIJA and bill. And, electric vehicles are seen as being kind of a premium, kind of out of reach of that particular, underserved people, I would say, particularly in cities and things, but that's an area where we think there's a lot of opportunity if we can bring the costs down and make the infrastructure available. And then again, that would help people operate electric vehicles maybe locally that aren't necessarily going to be on the interstates. So there's a lot of awareness, education, and technical stuff that we need to address. You have industry standards that are not really standards at all when you have Tesla having proprietary charging kind of things. So there's things industry-wide that we need to kind of work on. But this is kind of a jump start to talk about getting these charging stations in place. And in addition to the private ones that you may have seen at some of the sheets, particularly on interstates, I know in the Northwest region, this is the idea here is to make more of these available, particularly for those that may be traveling on the interstates and going longer distances, and then discuss how we push this down to a local level. So that's really kind of my review on the NEVI stuff. I would like to, I know it was just recently brought up that there is going to be a Western Pennsylvania NEVI meeting. There was an invite that went out for Monday, August 29th. So there'll be some additional information coming out about that, but that'll get into more detail with regards to Pennsylvania's mobility plan, what that means, and the public engagement, talking about equity, business involvement, and then looking for discretionary funds, regional opportunities for some of those earmark funds that could be available. And then talking about programming on the tip and stip. I don't know where that goes. I don't know how we get to that point. That's new to me. So I'll be learning that as well, along with everybody that's on this call. And then there'll be an opportunity for an interactive discussion, to talk about, Q&As and again, just making sure that, if there's any questions out there, if we don't have answers, we'll work to get those for you. So, so that's, I know some PennDOT staff has been invited to that as well, and we'll make that link available so that, and that information also available to Emily, so that again, we can have some additional participation to walk through Pennsylvania's NEVI plan, so that people can become more informed on what is in that particular plan. So with that, sorry to be so long-winded on that, but that's where we are with Pennsylvania's NEVI plan. Any questions? I don't know if I can answer them, but if you have any questions, hopefully we'll have some links out there in the chat, for you to get some more information, and I would encourage you to look at that.
Kevin, Dave Mitchell here.
Yeah, Dave.
I just wanted to highlight something that came up this week. In Mayville, New York, the town council voted down putting in a charging station in the town because they buy their electricity and they don't want it to affect the town's electric rates.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I highlight that is that, this is local government looking at these charging stations. I know in Corey, we looked at putting some in, which that fell through because the funding wasn't there at the time. But pay attention to these local governments and how they're going to accept these charging stations. And it's a red herring, but it's kind of interesting that happens.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Good input. And I think that's something to consider as we move forward. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, and I try to keep the politics out of it, but there's a lot of discussion about, hey, you're pushing this on us. And then, we've done this in cities, particularly in California, and where we've pushed charging stations out there using tax dollars, not necessarily federal dollars, but in some cases there was some assistance to do that, particularly some of the pilot programs. And one of the concerns is that, you put this money into there, you make the investment, and then there's discussions that in some areas, less than 50% of those charging stations after a couple of years are inoperable. You got to think about maintenance. Where's the electricity coming from? Who are we targeting? I think there's a lot of considerations here. And I would say that most of the targeting right now with regards to the stations is, if the feds are going to pay for it and we're going to put it on NHS networks and maybe higher level networks, who's going to pay for the maintenance on that? And so there's good questions to be asked. And when it comes to local government, I think you get into more depth with regards to the infrastructure, that payment, things like that, because again, now you're imposing on those locals. And again, if you have a tourist type thing and you want to draw people in, there's pluses, but then you got to look at the negatives as well. So I think it's a great point, Dave, and I certainly I think I've been following some of this stuff with interest and hearing some of the challenges that we've had moving forward. And are we moving too fast? Or it's one of those things where if you do or you don't, and it's like, this is what's in front of us. We have our plan in place, and hopefully it'll be a good thing as we move forward. But certainly we need to take all of the pluses and negatives and all those decisions, and particularly as this gets pushed down to the local level, and and looking at private investment too. I know Sheets has gone forward and put in some of the stations themselves, and it would be interesting to hear their perspective, because I know they were kind of out front on some of that charging, particularly in Pennsylvania. So again, great point, Dave. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Yep. Anybody have any other questions for Kevin? Those of us that are online, hopefully you noticed that Brandon posted a couple of, one to the Nevia and one to a app of EV chargations on PennDOT's website. Emily, if you could share those to the group or everybody that's there in person and may not have access to them, but thank you for that.
Thanks.
Next up is Northwest PA Waste Plan 22 public meeting. Do you want to speak about?
Yes, I just quickly wanted to say that the Northwest region is doing a green waste plan update. So it's nice to have regional perspective on our local county MPO. If anyone would like to participate in their public meeting, it will be August 18th at 6:30, and you can click on the link in the agenda. I don't know why it's not blue, but it is a link and you can click on it. So just a way to participate in our region. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. We do have one more informational item. It would be an Erie Metropolitan Transit Authority update from Danny Duran. Danny, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, we yesterday we welcomed Senator Casey here. He came to speak about the IIJA funds and about the increase in our funding, which is about a 42% increase, and we normally get 42% more from 2021. So we are now getting a little bit over $6 million. So we are excited about that and are ready to continue to serve the community.
Well,
great. Yeah, that's good. Good
news.
If
you need it on the tip.
Oh yes, and I will be needing to put this on the tip. Thanks, Emily.
Great. Well, thank you. That's good for EMTA. Does anybody have any questions for Danny? Okay, then moving on. Next agenda item is hearing of the public. Are there members of the public who would like to comment? All right, none, then we will move on. The next scheduled meeting for the MPO is a coordinating committee meeting on September 15th at 10 a.m. But I think Em announced in lead detail will be a special meeting of the coordinating committee on Monday, August 15th at 2 o'clock at Summit Township and also Cooley. As we discussed today, I think it's very important. It's regarding moving money for the Bayfront Central Corridor project. Anybody that's on here now that are members of the coordinating committee, please do your best to attend. If you have other members of your organization that are coordinating committee members, make sure you let them know that it's important, and please try and get the word out.
But Tuesday, Matt. It will be Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Oh, sorry. So Tuesday, that's the 16th?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wrote that down wrong. Yep, and you will be sending out information on that, I'm sure.
Yes, I will be sending information.
Okay, great. Thank you. I apologize for that. Tuesday, the 16th at 2 p.m. Anything else for the good of the order from anyone? All right, then. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their time, and I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Adjourned until 40. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Matt.
Everyone.
Good meeting.